14 students, 2 group leaders, and 1 volunteer were hiking in northern Scotland when an exciting adventure turned into tragedy. This is the Cairngorm Plateau disaster. On Saturday, November 20th, 14 students, 2 group leaders, and a volunteer aide set out on a hiking adventure to cross the Cairngorm Plateau. The Cairngorm Plateau extends between 2 glacial valleys which run roughly north to south. The Cairngorms are named after the mountain peak, the Cairngorm, at a height of 1,245 meters. There are many trails throughout the largest national park in Scotland, with many shelters for hikers as the weather is known to quickly turn. These shelters are small metal huts covered with rock. The hiking plan was prepared and laid out by Ben Beattie. Beattie was a 23-year-old experienced mountaineer, though he had never been in the Cairngorms in winter. His plan was to leave early on Saturday morning, dividing the groups in 2, with Beattie leading the more experienced group of hikers, while his 20-year-old girlfriend, Kathy Davidson, and an 18-year-old volunteer aide, Sheila Sundlin, would lead the less experienced group on a slightly easier route. They would hike to Ben Macdui, a 1,309-meter peak, and camp overnight at Cairngorm Hut, and hike back the following day. The hike would be 2 days with a single overnight stay. Beattie had also planned in an emergency stay at Cairngorm Hut if the weather turned or if any of the children felt that they couldn't make it and the groups had to stop. This plan was approved by John Paisley, the head of the Lagania Outdoor Training Center. Paisley also knew of the less than ideal weather conditions, but little did they know that the weather would be much worse than they forecast. Saturday morning began with a late start, already putting the group behind schedule. What was supposed to be an early morning departure didn't get started until 11 o'clock. To make up time, the group rode the ski lift to the start of the plateau. There, the 2 groups formed, with Beattie's group heading off first. Davidson's group quickly fell behind as they were the less experienced. Soon after their departure, the weather turned, but this was expected. However, the weather continued to increasingly get worse. Beattie decided to activate the emergency plan and take his group to Cairngorm Hut as planned. When Beattie's group arrived at Cairngorm Hut, they had to dig out the snow from the front door to enter. Once inside, they had shelter from the wind, but not the cold. Their body heat and the warmth of their sleeping bags kept them alive. Cairngorm Hut was a metal container covered in boulders. It was later described by one of the boys, John Blakey, as a frozen icebox covered by stones. The next day, the group trekked through a blizzard in deep snow until after dark. At 4:30 p.m., they reached their destination, a hut with a telephone. They telephoned Lagania with their position. Until this moment, Beattie's group had assumed that Davidson's group had taken shelter at a different hut. It was this moment when they realized that there had been no word from Davidson's group. Like Beattie's group, Davidson's group ran into the winter storm soon after departure. And like Beattie, Davidson realized that she must switch to the emergency plan and get to Cairngorm Hut. However, Davidson's group was not as far along as Beattie's group. In whiteout conditions, and Davidson knowing that even if they reached Cairngorm Hut, it would most likely be buried in snow, Davidson abandoned the plan and decided to go to a closer shelter near Loch Beattie. On the way, the group became distressed, and Davidson decided that the best course of action was to build a winter bivouac. This gave the group temporary relief and spirits were high, but Davidson had made a mistake. There was no way for Davidson to know this, but the location that they had built the bivouac was notorious for accumulating large amounts of snow. Soon the snow began to gather around the group and the high spirits diminished. Exhausted from the day and the cold, the students fell asleep. The next morning, as they awoke, a voice could be heard from under the snow. One of the children had been buried. Davidson and a 16-year-old named William Kerr dug out the others and set off to find help. However, they only made it a few feet when they sank in the deep snow and were blasted by extreme winds. They would have to wait for rescue, and a rescue team was on the way. 50 volunteers had organized a rescue mission for the group. They were out on the plateau searching for the lost hikers in near whiteout conditions with flares lighting their way. On several occasions, members of the group would see these flares in the distance and would cry out to get their attention to no avail. The group's flares had become covered with snow, so there was no other way for the group to signal the search party. The search party simply couldn't see them in whiteout conditions. The weather continued the entire Sunday, and the group knew that they would have to spend another cold, long night as young members began to succumb to exposure. By Monday morning, the storm was light enough to allow a helicopter to search. Davidson also set out for help. The helicopter, after checking in at Coran Hut and finding nothing, on their return spotted Davidson crawling on her hands and knees in the snow. As the crew attempted to carry her into the helicopter, they noticed that her legs had been locked into a bent position. When the search party arrived at the bivouac, all but one had perished. Davidson and the last surviving member of the group would physically recover. In total, 5 students and 1 aide perished that day. If you enjoyed the story, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.